Hey guys, Marsegg here bringing you another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today we are going to talk about the potential future of the crossover category and what we could see potentially coming soon as a way to give this category a bit of a buff. I'm not going to focus primarily on the Heroes EZAs in this video. You guys know I've talked about it a whole bunch. We talk about Heroes obviously on the channel all the time, but we still really have no idea what's going on with the Heroes EZAs. I mean, you can see right at the top of the crossover page here, you've got the Xeno Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4 Goku and the Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. They are due to get an EZA this year. In fact, even the Corrupted Supreme Kai of Time and the Super Saiyan 4 Bardock that are right there, they're also some of the ones that are supposed to be getting an EZA this year. But we have absolutely no idea what is going on with them. All we know is what we were told last year in the Heroes celebration, that it was going to be the final celebration for Heroes, but that the units would still receive strengthening in the future through things like EZAs. They also said EZAs and more, which, as we've mentioned before, I don't really know what else that could mean other than potentially special skill orbs. Maybe it means a super EZA for some of the Heroes units, who knows. But obviously that was over a year ago now, and we have moved from November into December with still no actual news of the Heroes EZAs or when they are going to drop. And one of the things that I had talked about previously quite a bit, and seems to have been true at least so far, is that it didn't really make any sense for me for them to drop the Heroes EZAs just randomly with something else that's like completely unconnected, right? So we got Android 16 as the Dokkan Fest. We had the Daima celebration. We had Goma as the Part 2 LR. Then we had Android 16 as the Dokkan Fest for end of November. None of those releases really made sense to have the Super Saiyan 4, to have the Heroes EZAs drop with them, because even though there are Super Saiyan 4s, they're obviously not related to Daima Goku. There's a bunch of Heroes units up for EZA this year that are not Super Saiyan 4s. So whilst we could have drawn that connection, it obviously wasn't a direct link or anything like that. So I still am very much under the impression that they're going to release these EZAs and potentially a bunch of other Awakenings and EZAs and stuff like that alongside something that makes a bit more sense, like a crossover character or something similar, because we know we're not going to get a new Heroes unit. We're not getting new Heroes characters anymore. The Heroes game is out of service and has been now for a long time. The replacement, I guess you would call it, for Heroes, the Super Divers, they've recently had their first anniversary, and we talked about how, you know, there was a possibility of seeing a crossover maybe to do with that, because they had the Marseillan as their anniversary character, which would have been pretty cool, but obviously nothing has materialized from that either. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it won't, just because it didn't happen straight away, but it does also make it a little bit less likely, but you never know. Dokkan has done these sort of weird things in the past where they've dropped crossover characters. I mean, we mentioned Marseillan, right? Like, his card art shows the Xenoverse logo. Like, he is a crossover with the Xenoverse character, technically. And he just randomly dropped in the game on the same banner as the Tech Super Saiyan 3 Angel Goku when he came out as the Super Tech 120 leader. So they don't really ever need a reason to drop these characters, right? Super Saiyan 3 Broly just came out as the Extreme Tech 120 lead. We have the STR Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. We have the Super Saiyan 3 Bardock. Like, these characters came out not as part of a big crossover celebration specifically. They just came out as Dokkan festivals, who obviously at the time, like crossover wasn't a category. They just came out as a thing in the game. So there is always the potential that that could happen again. We obviously talked about Android 21, who 2 years ago in 2023 was the end of November Dokkan Fest, and they just randomly decided to do a crossover character for that Dokkan Fest. And then obviously with her having like androids on the team, they awakened the Android 13 and made the, or as I should say, awakened EZA'd the AGL Android 13, and then the Part 2 LR was related to that, of course, being the Super Saiyan trio from the Android 13 movie. So a celebration doesn't have to be wholly themed around crossover for them to drop a crossover character. And so that leads us to where we are now. Obviously, I've done some speculation about who the Part 2 LR could potentially be. I am still very much leaning towards it being some version of Trunks, but we still have one other big release after that, after this December Carnival, before the year is truly over, and then there are no other real releases until the 11th anniversary will kick off. There might be like a, an EZA as part of the countdown celebration and stuff like that. That's happened before, but in terms of new units coming out, the only thing that we will have left after this December Carnival is the New Year's Dual Dokkan Fest. And so the idea that I wanted to talk about in this video is one that I've seen it suggested. It was brought up in my chat on a stream. We were talking about different crossover characters and way they could bring new characters to the game. And a very interesting idea was floated that we chatted about for a bit, because obviously Xenoverse is still going strong, still releasing updates. I don't think Xenoverse 3 has been officially announced. I know there was like a fake logo floating around and stuff like that, but that has been going on for quite some time now. And whilst they've never done like, I say never, they haven't recently done any Xenoverse crossovers when Xenoverse has dropped one of their big DLC updates or anything like that. But obviously the game is still there, the game still has players, the game is still churning out content. And so something that I think would be very, very interesting to see is when the New Year Dual Dokkan Fest rolls around, the idea of the New Year's Dual Dokkan Fest being a Xeno Trunks as one of the characters, and then Fu as the other character, because obviously this version of Fu here, like he's the Heroes version, he's the Heroes crossover, but Fu obviously plays a pretty big role in Xenoverse, especially in some of the newer DLCs, as being the antagonist, experiencing with like experimenting with like the power of time unleashed and all that kind of stuff. So I think this would be very, very cool. These guys, I assume, would end up being like Xenoverse crossover cards, like you see here. Obviously Trunks has the Xenoverse logo. He's such an old unit that he is technically a Xenoverse 1 crossover character, so I don't know if they would do it in such a way that like these guys would have the Xenoverse 2 logo specifically, or whether they would just keep the Xenoverse 1. But I feel like this could be very interesting, and it could work in a lot of good ways for the game, because obviously we are getting a bunch of buffs now. We got in the AGL, Trunks, EZA. We don't yet know what other stuff part 2 of this celebration will bring. That's something that we've been speculating about in other recent videos, so do check those out. But not just talking about the part 2 LR, but like who the other EZAs could be. And with AGL Trunks, Dokkan Fest getting his EZA, the part 2 Carnival LR potentially being a Trunks of some kind, maybe a Super Trunks, or even a Future Trunks. This guy coming then as the New Year Dual Dokkan Fest being another uniquely named Trunks would be quite cool. Especially he could be transforming, he could be Super Saiyan that then goes Super Saiyan 3, he could even just be Super Saiyan 3, although Trunks doesn't really use any of the other crazy forms in Xenoverse very much. I know he's there as a bystander quite a lot. In fact, he's very often just there, like in base. But that would be pretty cool, even if he was transforming base to Super Saiyan, if he was just straight up Super Saiyan, anything really. Because he has the unique name, being Trunks brackets Xeno, he's going to link with any of the ones that have the EZAs or new releases or the Part 2 Carnival LR, any of that kind of stuff. Regardless of who they are, he's going to be perfectly fine. And obviously with us getting missions lately like Hybrid Saiyans for the Red Zone stages, I think this could be certainly very interesting. And Trunks is on a lot of good categories for building other teams. Obviously things like Super Saiyan, Bond of Master and Disciple, Bond of Parent and Child, of course, Earthbred Fighters, Successors, Mission Execution as well is certainly interesting. So this guy has a lot of decent categories, and he's a Trunks, right? So like the classics like Hybrid Saiyans and Vegeta family, like he's going to be pretty good. And Fu, I think, makes a very interesting counterpart for him. Obviously, if we got a Xenoverse crossover version, like he wouldn't be on the Heroes category, but he would be on crossover. He's on Battle of Wits, he's on Demonic Power, he's on Time Travelers. I guess depending on the version of Fu would depend whether he'd be on Exploding Rage. So I guess his categories could be fairly limited, but then I suppose it also depends like which version of Fu, like from Xenoverse. I don't know. I'm not super up on all the stuff that he's been up to in the latest Xenoverse 2 DLC, but it's very possible that he would have some other categories as well. I don't know if the Power of Time Unleashed thing is a buff that he uses himself, whether he would get any sort of like transformation boost or uncontrollable power like links or anything like that, but could be certainly very interesting just as an extreme character. Obviously Demonic Power has gotten a huge amount of buffs recently. Not sure on his links as well, whether they would go ahead. If they were doing it as like a Trunks versus Fu kind of setup, would they give him big bad bosses? I feel like maybe not. I think only the Demon King Fu has big bad bosses, because he is the boss of that particular arc from Heroes. But either way, I feel like this could be a pretty cool dual Dokkan Fest, because it's one of those things where for the people that want this kind of thing, then it's like a cool hype thing for them to do, something a little bit different. And for the people who don't care as much about crossover, never really cared about Heroes, don't play Xenoverse, like all that kind of stuff, this is just another one of those perfect opportunities then where something is dropping right before the anniversary and you have no interest in summoning for it, and therefore you don't have to spend any of your anniversary fund summoning right before the anniversary comes. But this sort of celebration I think could be very good for the game, because not only does it then give the ability to have the Heroes EZAs, as we've already said, because we are now having a celebration that is crossover themed, but of course, as we've mentioned many times in the past when talking about the various crossover characters that still need to be updated, we not only have obviously this guy himself, the actual AGL Super Saiyan Xeno Trunks, but there is the base form Xeno Trunks, very, very old unit. Then we have the Tech Toa, the Physical Mirror, and the Int Demigra. Like, there's literally only those 5 or even 6 units in the game. I think there's like the Super Strike Trunks as well. The characters that have this Xenoverse link. And these guys are like desperately awaiting EZAs. I mean, these guys awakened in terms of JP. These 3 got their awakenings in 2020. At the same time was one of the hero celebrations was going on. A bunch of crossover characters got their TUR awakenings. And so these guys have been waiting 5 years now in order to get their EZAs. And of course, we also have the other crossover characters. I think they awakened. Yeah, these guys awakened like the next year. We have the physical Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, the Tech GT Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. We have the STR Super Saiyan 2 Trunks, who again is another character that would go well with all the other recent Trunks updates that we've gotten. He's just an all allies support, but also gives more support to crossover. So of course, him getting an EZA during this celebration would be perfect for then putting him on the Xeno Trunks team. And then obviously there is, as I said, all the Heroes EZAs that we are still yet to get as well. Crossover definitely has a lot of stuff that still needs that little bit of attention. Like the Vegeta, this guy, when at the time they got their TUR awakenings, like this guy was actually really good and was very usable in the meta at the time. This guy was relatively decent. Obviously chance to guard is always very annoying, so it's something that if that was improved on with his EZA, he could certainly be very good. Xenotron, I mean, this guy's just so old now. This guy is almost 10 years old without an EZA, which is kind of wild to think about. But yeah, all of these characters with categories like Demonic Power, getting these buffs recently, any characters that help out on those teams. This guy is technically an android, so you know that category's just got another interesting buff. He's on Uncontrollable Power, so you know he's on the 16 team, which is kind of interesting. Then we have the Toa, who's just a solid support unit. She's on Demonic Power as well. I think this could be very, very interesting. Obviously, when it comes to Fu, leader skill wise, these guys, I don't know if crossover would be one of their main like 170s, and then they would just have combinations of the other ones like Demonic Power or Time Travelers. Trunks obviously has a lot more options. He could have something like crossover, hybrid Saiyans, even like Super Saiyans, and then the extra ones being like Bond of Parent and Child, Time Travelers, which would give him a crazy combination of both Heroes characters, crossover units, and some of the stronger like units in the game as well. So Trunks definitely would be in a better position in terms of leader skill. Like I say, Fu, depending on the version of Fu and the kind of connections they want to make to whatever version of him they choose, like they could give him some extra categories. But obviously if you are an avid Xenoverse player and you've played all the DLC and you have any ideas for extra categories and things like that that you think a Xenoverse version of Fu could be on, do let us know down below in the comment section. But I think this would be a really cool choice for like an end of year dual Dokkan Fest, having a crossover with a bunch of all of these other things that we've waited to see for years, the Heroes EZAs. And again, it's something that people who aren't super into the crossover stuff don't really need to worry about summoning. But if you've been playing the game for a while, because they're available in like every banner, you probably have a lot of these characters. And so them getting easy A's and, you know, fingers crossed, getting good easy A's would potentially then be useful to you on some of the teams that you do run, even if you don't really care about crossover. So it's kind of a win-win. If you're not super hyped about these guys as an option, it means you don't have to spend stones to summon right before the anniversary, but you potentially get a whole bunch of content to go along with them that could be useful to you on the teams that you run and things like that. So I definitely think this would be very cool. Obviously, I'm not saying that I believe in any way, shape or form that there's like a high chance that this happens or anything, but with no other crossover releases this year, and the fact that, you know, they just randomly dropped the 21 as a crossover Dokkan Fest at the end of 2023. I feel like there's definitely a possibility. The Heroes ECAs, I mean, unless they have just changed their mind, unless something has changed behind the scenes and they just can't do them, like, we know they're supposed to happen at some point. And as I've said before, it doesn't really make sense for them to just drop on their own out of the blue with other content that they don't really gel with, you know. So I think this would be a pretty cool end of year Dual Dokkan Fest. But let me know what you guys think down below. Would you be hyped for a Xeno Trunks and Fu kind of Xenoverse crossover to end off 2025? Would it be a big skip for you? Either way, let me know all your thoughts on that down below. And obviously, if you have your own ideas or things that you would want to see as the New Year Dual Dokkan Fest, let me know that down below in the comment section as well. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Master Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.